We're here with Bob Previdi, who's CEO and founder of Pskw. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we're here with Chris Dowd, and you're Senior Vice President of Market and Product Development for Pskw.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
Bob, pharma is a very fast-moving industry. Copay cards are a rapidly moving sector of the industry. Talk about where the industry is evolving with regard to copay card programs.
Well, Mark, that's a good question. We've seen the copay industry from the very beginning, and it's rapidly evolved in just a short 7 years. From an industry a little over 7 years ago that wasn't spending a single dollar in copay to now where it's estimated it's going to be in excess of $10 billion. Where we see the industry going is really around now cleaning up the programs in terms of making sure that the right patient gets the right offer at the right time. And it's sort of the motto, I think, that most of our clients are trying to follow. Where the industry is going to go in the next few years is really going to be around two areas. One is going to be around optimal offer, making sure that the right offer is being presented to the marketplace that can coordinate with their payer strategy along with other types of programs they have out there. The second area, I think, which is really exciting, are the channels that are rapidly developing. That would be the digital channels, that would be e-prescribing, mobile, pharmacy, and so forth. And I know a lot of people are talking about the different channels, but the one I think that most folks are talking about today is e-prescribing. I think Chris can give a little bit more insight into the e-prescribing side.
Sure. Yeah, it is interesting that how it's evolved in that when a marketer was about to launch a product, they think about a lot of different things, but not necessarily about a copay program. But nowadays, if you're launching a product, you have to have some sort of a copay assistance program on the market because the managed care pickup is relatively slow. The product might not be reviewed right away. You may have to go 6 months without coverage. You may have to be put on third tier or worse. And you really have to have something in the hands of the representative to talk through with the physician that we've handled the copay for short term, at least for the launch. And then it's also evolved in whether you want to reach out to other types of patients. So just the evolution of a marketer's thoughts on what do I do with copay, where does it apply, has been very interesting to watch. As far as the channels, as Bob said, the most exciting channel is probably digital, and then take that a little further into EMR, electronic medical record space, and e-prescribing space. Because it's really all about how do you get that offer in the hands of the patient? How do you get that offer in the hands of the pharmacy? And e-prescribing is the fastest growing way to prescribe, and with the prescription, if you could tie in the copay offer with that, is very exciting.
Bob, everyone's talking about doing more with less now. Marketing budgets we've seen shrink from their former glory days. How do you consult with patients, potential clients and present ones on how to maximize and make the most of their marketing dollar?
It sort of falls back on what we discussed previously around an optimal offer. The biggest concern with pharmaceutical manufacturers is cannibalization. That's patients who would have went and had their prescriptions filled, whether or not they had received a discount or not from the manufacturer through a copay card. We've been working specifically on several alternatives for the industry, specifically around analytics, looking at the right offer that addresses the patients that need copay the most. That, along with some new vehicles being introduced by us and others called compliance scoring or adherence scoring, in which it works very much like a credit score, where we measure a patient's ability to pay for the medication and whether or not that's going to be a barrier to them getting their prescription filled. The second area is really around abandonment, and that's where the channels come into play. Abandonment takes place at the pharmacy. So there's no better place to have a program sit than in the pharmacy for when that patient may not want to move forward with getting their prescription filled. There are programs out there that have been out for a few years. They're called switch-based programs where they automatically lower the copay within the pharmacy. However, those programs have sort of lost favor in the past year or so because of the cannibalization factor. Every patient who walks in will have their copay lowered to, let's say $20 instead of paying $40 or $50. While that might sound great at the outset, you really need to have a mechanism in place that helps pharmacists manage those patients on pharmaceutical manufacturers' behalf. We at Pskw, along with others, have introduced programs that are in the pharmacy. And we've found, have been very effective because pharmacists know when patients are going to walk away, and they're losing the patient too. They're losing a customer. So they want to keep that patient on the medication, and they're going to use a copay program when it's most appropriate.
Copay cards offer a valuable tool for pharmaceutical companies in an age of ever more assertive payers. But they've also drawn fierce criticism for driving up healthcare costs. Is that criticism fair?
I don't believe it's fair at all. You know, these criticisms are coming directly from PBMs, from pharmacy benefit management companies. And the reason is it's a financial reason around rebates. The rebates, if you think about a copay program, if you just tear it right down to its DNA, it's simply a rebate that's coming from a pharmaceutical manufacturer directly to a patient. Previously to copay programs, those rebates went through PBMs. Mm-hmm. So the PBMs would create a formulary positioning, and they would recommend or structure copay programs based on preferences in the formulary, that rebate. So the fact that the rebate is going directly to the patient, it's just a more effective way to do it. Studies show that patients who get copay cards are 3 times more likely to stay on therapy than patients who don't. And in the state of Massachusetts, the fact that they recently unanimously overturned a ban on copay programs. Why? Because patients were demanding it. They were actually getting their prescriptions filled, going across the border to New Hampshire to get their prescriptions filled. That's not the type of activity you want happening by preventing patients from getting what they want. There were so many tools out there in the marketplace that industry has tried to use to get patients to get and stay on their medication. Well, we found one, and we found one that is probably the most effective one that's ever been invented. It's copay programs, because it's removing that financial barrier, helping to reduce that financial barrier that's preventing a patient from getting their medication. We've all heard the horror stories. I only take a pill every other day because I can't afford it. While that might be to the extreme, the reality is that patients will, there are segments of patients out there that want to get their medication, they want to stay on therapy, and financial barriers exist, and these programs help to reduce or eliminate that. And it's the reason the industry has really exploded in growth.
Yeah, CVS Caremark did a really good study, and the study shows that when you take away copays, adherence grows. Now, they were doing that around generic, and it's very common for a plan to say there's no more copay on generic. But the correlation is the same. There's a price pressure to the patient. Many of these patients are on multiple products. There's something called copay burden. So it's not just $20, it's $80 to $160 for this patient for copays because they're picking up all their meds. So this copay burden really adds up. Some of the plans, in order to keep the patients on, will remove the copays on the generics. However, if the physician has selected a brand and they want the patient on that brand for a good reason, because they failed on older products or less or inferior products, that's where the copay program would come in, is basically take the copay down on the brand product, while the PBM may remove the copay on the generic product. Overall, the adherence is really tripled. So at the end of the day, the physicians win, the patients win, and really the PBM is still winning too, because they've used a copay strategy, but for generics. They just agree for it for generics. They don't agree for it for brand, unless the brand is preferred.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you have the data on your side, to prove the worth of these programs. And as you mentioned, this is about a 7-year-old industry, and Pskw has been in there from the start. So you bring a unique historical perspective to the equation here. So it's interesting to hear your point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Marc.
Thank you, Marc.
Great.
Sure.
Good talking to you.
Likewise.